Hello, everyone. It's Deb Blum, and I am here today with Tia Fagan. It is so great to be here with you.
It's so lovely to be here this morning.
Yes, it really is. I am excited we have so much in common, I think, just so many things to talk about. And I'm so excited to see where we go with this. But before we get into anything, I'm going to have you do a little introduction. But from what I know of you, I just want to pass on that some things that I know about you. I know that you have two children. So you have twins, 19-year-old
Yep.
daughters, and they are typically at college, but not right now because we are recording this on April 2nd, 2020, which is in the midst of the pandemic, the
Right.
coronavirus. So they are from college with you. So I am, interested in knowing how that's going, but that you are also a conscious parenting method certified coach, which is through Dr. Shefali. Yeah,
Yes.
Dr. Shefali.
Yep.
And I love that. And so you coach people, you also do circles, and it sounds like those circles are inner work circles, which is great. And also you do some work with, is it middle schoolers? You do work with?
Yeah, I have a class with middle school girls primarily. The group right now is all girls, and it's helping them with that transition and into adolescence and all that comes with the middle school. So it's bringing in art. I do it with another woman who creates the artwork, which is in conjunction with the teachings, and it's just an open space for them to explore. And we have conversations. We may have an intention for the class, but really they guide it, which is how it should be.
Wow, that's great.
It's really fun.
I love that you're doing all that. That's so great. Well, so I would love to hear from you. Tell me anything you'd like to tell us about, any more that you want to expand on from what I said, but also just you and your path and anything from any angle.
Sure. You covered the gist of the form aspect, being a parent coach and leading circles and helping people with that inner work and letting the soul rise up and trusting ourselves and tapping into that inner knowing. My journey is like many, it's my own, but it follows similar paths from people I've spoken with. I used to be an engineer, so very in my head, very analytical. And then I became a mother. And prior to becoming a mother, halfway through the pregnancy, found out I was having twins, which was not in the plan at all. I was to have one child at a time. So right away, looking back, I didn't see it at the time. Right away, they gave me the gift of, you need to understand you have no control over us. So again, I didn't see that in the moment, but I did surrender. I at least had the foresight to drop into my heart and surrender to being on bed rest 2 weeks later and telecommuting and having NICU babies for 12 days. And, so they already gave me lessons before their first 2 weeks of coming home. And it really started the trajectory for me. Again, I didn't know it at the time. I fell into, perfect mom role, don't ask for help. These are my babies. I do what I'm supposed to do. I don't let them cry. If they cry, I pick them up, and all of the things that the books told me to do. And over time, things didn't feel in alignment with me. I started to really begin to listen to that inner voice that I hadn't been listening to for so long. And I didn't go back to engineering after a year. I telecommuted a little bit and started my inner work. And it really started with, like many, reading books, Eckhart Tolle and all of that. But as we know, when we read books, we're not necessarily putting it into action, but it's starting the foundation. And then I started to take more action. I joined circle groups. I did a 3-year equine emotional growth and healing certification program, and that was incredible. It really opened up my eyes. And then learning of Dr. Shefali's work, I think my children were about middle school age at that time, so 6-7 years ago. And that was the missing link for me. It really, she showed me and put the spotlight on, you're doing this inner work, but you're not directly applying it in your parenting. It was unconsciously showing up, but not with action, not with intention. And then her work, along with the work I was doing with other people, really, really made me look at myself in a new light and recognize how the control was showing up, how the perfectionism was still showing up, how, you know, how I was being a victim, how I was being a martyr, and how I was looking at them and not looking at myself. And so it really turned the spotlight to another really much deeper level. And I'm just grateful for how the path laid out for me, you know, because I still have that analytical, critical thinking part of the engineering, but it's no longer all here.
It's more connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love,
So,
okay. That's so cool. I knew we had a lot in common. But I actually come from an IT background.
mm-hmm.
So I was in technology for my whole time before having kids, and then ended up also deciding to be home with them. And I think that it's so fascinating because you're right. Like when I look back, I was given the same, I was given the same, I guess, information, if you will, even though I didn't take it at the
Mm-hmm.
time with my son, that he was a preemie and I was on bed rest as well. And he came out and it was like immediate, you're not doing things the way that you may have thought you were going to do them. There's a different path
Exactly.
for you. But I think it's also interesting that both of us know, even though at some level we knew that we went into that perfectionist mode. We did, it's like we took what we were doing outside in the world and then we like
Mm-hmm.
applied it to parenting. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's fascinating that I think that's part of the beginning of the journey, at least for me,
And
as
me as
part of the
well,
beginning of the
definitely.
journey. Yeah. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you said that you were having that, you said that there was a point where you were listening to the voices inside, like you were listening to yourself more. Do you recall like what had you finally listening? Do you remember what that was?
I really think in hindsight, you know, it was my children. You know, they kept showing me the mirror. You know, again, I didn't know this at the time, but you know, as they became more autonomous, as we started to hit toddlerhood, and I could no longer control and manipulate everything, and so their autonomy, and both of them still are incredibly strong-willed, amazing young women who are not afraid to tell me at all when I am unconscious. They may not use that term, but they were doing it when they were toddlers. And so, you know, they were pushing back. I couldn't control. And so I went to the next parenting book. Where's the magic fix? I was looking to the outside from these experts to tell me how to do it. And so I would read it. It wouldn't sit in with me, but I'm like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to put you in a timeout.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids were like, timeouts do not work. That just gets me more upset. You know, and I kept going, well, maybe I just have to keep trying. But inside there was that voice of like, it's not working. This is not working. This is not feeling good. If this doesn't feel good, you know, there's things that don't feel good, but they're still in alignment. They were not feeling good and not in alignment.
Yeah.
And so I had to just say, that didn't work. What will work? Wow, when I connect and I don't ignore the feelings, we move through them faster. You know, so I was intuitively playing this dance of, you know, this person tells me I should do this, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. So listen to yourself. Oh, no, I have to listen to the outside. So it was this play of back and forth. And then I started to trust myself more and more because they were giving me feedback. They were giving me beautiful feedback that this is working, Mom.
Yeah.
This
And
is
this
not
isn't
working.
working. Right. So
You
you
know,
just
so I trusted.
you differentiated something that I haven't actually heard anyone say it quite as well as you just did, which is the difference between it doesn't feel good and it's not in alignment. Because sometimes things don't feel good. Is that what you said? That sometimes
Yeah.
things don't feel good, but it still is in alignment.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really helpful thing, especially on the path to consciousness, because there have been
Mm-hmm.
so many things that I've had to do that are so in alignment, but they are so against everything that feels comfortable.
Right. Right.
So it doesn't feel good, but it's like, all right, Deb, you have got to have that conversation with that
Mm-hmm.
person. And it's so in
Exactly.
alignment, but it's so uncomfortable. So
Mm-hmm.
that's good.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the reason why it's so uncomfortable is because it's against what outside world is telling us to do. So it's going against our conditioning.
Yeah.
So as we start to break down that conditioning, it may no longer not feel as uncomfortable, because it's like anything, it's outside our comfort zone, right? That's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
So we have to take that leap
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trust, as long as you're in alignment, as long as you're listening. And we're going to make mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. 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 Because also, like, we're even learning what alignment is. Like
Right.
sometimes something that looks like alignment isn't, and our egos are incredibly they're little tricksters, they're very clever. And
Yes.
they did a lot of work to convince me of things being in alignment when, when I was like, wait, in retrospect, I don't really think that was.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the beauty, is we can take that step back and look and go, okay, I thought and I was wrong. And that's okay, because now I know I can trust XYZ instead of ABC.
Yeah.
How else are we going to learn?
Yeah.
and refine that place.
Yeah, exactly. When you were talking about your kids, and it's funny because I think a lot of everybody experiences that time when our kids start to push toward more autonomy, and they do push back against us. I mean, there's nobody, maybe a few people here and there that I've heard that their kids are just so cooperative and compliant, and but it's so rare. It seems like the kids just go through that as a phase, um and yet many people just keep powering through doing it the way that they did before, like controlling, and then what I think happens is often they're faced with an ongoing pattern of that. That's what parenting becomes. Parenting
Exactly.
becomes power struggles, parenting becomes behavior management, parenting becomes this really largely not that joyful experience for people. And so what I hear you saying, and it's been my experience as well, is that there was a way that you saw that their autonomy was like, it was activating you, it was triggering you a little bit, right? So it was like there was a part in you, and so instead of you trying to change them, I mean, I'm sure you attempted to in the beginning.
Oh, yes. Yes. And there were times, the pattern would repeat at a later age and be like, oh,
Yeah. Right. That's a great one to point out, that this is like, as they enter new territories, we can become activated again, and it deepens us one more layer of like how we can get more, like we could see again, oh, look at us doing that same thing that we did before, just in a different present day circumstance. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's almost like I wonder, does everyone hear those whispers, but we just don't, we just didn't listen all the way? Like, does everyone kind of get a little whisper here and there at certain points in their life, and it's just too noisy? It's just too noisy. Life is too busy, and we just don't, because I know for me, it took me a while. Like, I felt like I might have had many, many, many whispers before I really heeded the call. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're so focused on the doing and, depending on the schedule you have set up with your children, are you just going from activity to activity, or, whatever age they're at, and then our own expectations we put on ourselves, that I don't have time for that. I don't have time, and whether we're even aware it's there, I think it's an individual, where they're at on their own journey. I think some people don't even hear it. They're completely disconnected from their physical body. And if we're so disconnected from our physical body, we can't even hear the whispers.
Yeah.
Is my feeling for most people. But as you start to tap into your physical body, then you can hear the whispers more.
Yeah.
Because then we have to slow down, right? When we listen to our body, we realize we have to slow down at least for a minute a day.
Right.
So it starts that. But yeah, I mean, I know I had so many whispers I was not listening to. And once I started to tap into my physical body, and start to get some external body work, and it started the process of the internal, because for me, I had to, even though I was thinking I was doing that internal work through reading the books and whatnot, I hadn't tapped into that physical piece. And so getting that physical support to start to release some things that were trapped in my body, then I could start to really take the time and listen.
Yeah. For people who are wondering, I think it's really hard because it's like something, there's a funny thing about this. It's like, if you're not hearing it, then you don't even know. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, it's like
I do.
you just don't know. And, but I know that there's also really, really valid reasons why a lot of people are disconnected. We can have trauma. Could have had
Right.
traumatic experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
there can be not just big T traumas, but a lot of little T traumas, and a lot of reasons why people are ending up in their head. And then also society teaches us to, be busy, keep
Right.
moving, be productive, achieve,
Right.
this kind of fast pace that we're all on. And it takes a lot of courage to decide that you're going to do something different than what everybody else is doing. Do you remember points that do
Oh,
you
yeah.
ever remember points where that was like a hard decision for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And whether that external potential judgment or was there, it didn't matter because I was thinking it was there, and it
Yeah.
was, okay, so if, particularly in the teen years, it's like, well, your kids don't have a curfew. I'm like, no, it's an individual. If you're going out, what are you doing? What are your plans? When do you plan to be home? Because
Mm.
having a curfew for me, they don't take, then where's the responsibility and the communication and the collaboration? And I remember thinking, okay, I was raised with a curfew, and everyone I know was raised with a curfew, and other people are giving their kids a curfew. And I want to check in every day. And some days it's going to be, you're going to be home at 10, just because of how the night was going to lay out as they explained it to me. And other people, and it's like, well, so-and-so can stay out till midnight. I'm like, well, but if you're going to a movie and you're doing this, what are you going to do between 10:30 and midnight?
Right.
It sounds like you might as well just come home, or you guys are welcome to come home. Whatever it was in the moment, it was, let's meet. And even though other parents may judge, or I had, her situations, one of my daughters had a car accident very close after getting her license.
Mm.
Um, the license was still a piece of paper. The actual license hadn't showed up.
Ah, yeah.
And there was so much pushback. Are you going to ground her? Are you going to do? It's like it was an accident.
Yeah.
It was an accident, and I just remember feeling this pressure of, you should do X, Y, Z. But we figured out, okay, so maybe you just focus on this route again, and this is what you do, and then we'll expand it out, or this or that. But it was not no, I wasn't mad at you. Well, my parents would be mad at me. But why?
Mm.
Did you purposely go out? No. You're learning. You're
Right.
learning. But yeah, so it was that inner voice of, should I do what other people think I should be? I mean, I have many experiences like that. You should have, blah. How are they going to learn? Well, she's already learned.
Right.
I don't need to add on to it and add layers of shame, already to a trauma. Let's take the little T and make it a big T. No, I don't need to do that.
Yeah. So there's a big change then. It's a mental mindset change that I think we're talking about here for people. And I think it's really important to break this down in some ways, because there's a way that we're really shifting away from, I think you said the word control, and I would have used that word too. Like, there was an orientation toward control, and really um, the thought that I was responsible for teaching them lessons
Mm-hmm.
through my intervention,
Mm-hmm.
rather than really being in collaboration with them. And by the way, like, I just want to emphasize, for me, I definitely don't, I believe that it's still a growth hierarchy. Like, I'm still the mother.
Yes.
It's not that there's like, I'm just not overpowering them anymore, but I still believe that
Mm-hmm.
there's a growth hierarchy. And I still do. It's like you still said, well, it's 10 o'clock tonight and here are the reasons. It's not that there's no place for boundaries or no place for clear, limits and direction.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the myths of a lot of the people who are parenting in a different way these days, is there's a myth that it's very permissive. Like
Right.
even it's even, you could look at what you say about curfew, and that could look like it's permissive, when
Mhm.
actually it's really not permissive. And you could even
Mhm.
make the argument that a midnight curfew in that situation, when they were going to have that time frame between 10:30 and midnight, is more permissive. So it's kind of
Right.
a little bit of it's like a mind trick for people,
Yeah.
that you're engaged in a different way. So for you, how do you describe that when you try to explain the difference between who you were and how you parented before to who you are and how you parent now?
We'll definitely have shifted from control to connection. I
Hmm.
mean, that's just for me, that's an easy way to embody it.
Hmm.
Um, and it keeps it simple and concise. And to elaborate on that, I mean, I used to be very much of you walked in the door, your backpack should be put away, your lunchbox should be here, ABC, check these off, do it. And then over time, because that was a huge trigger for me, like put your lunchbox away and put everything in the dishwasher, because I wanted it all done. Um, and I still can revert to those old patterns at times when I'm off balance. But then it's shifted to connection. It's like, does it really matter if the lunchbox is put away within the first 5 minutes of getting home? No, it doesn't. Hey, when do you plan to get the lunchbox put away? I'll get it put away before we have dinner. Okay. And then allow. And allowing that space, it sounds so small and so little, but for me, it was a monumental
Mm.
mind shift for me, because that first week, I just remember sitting there looking at that. I mean, and it sounds just completely out there, but it was like this reminder of me of like, just don't say anything. And it would literally, I'd be like, we're 5 minutes from dinner and that lunchbox. But I just kept breathing. I'm like, I'm going to trust. And then if I need to remind, I could remind. But almost every time would come for dinner, they'd get their lunchbox put away, sit at the table.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's a simple thing, but now shifting into it, it's about, and it expands as they get older, so it's all age developmentally appropriate, child appropriate, because one child may be more able to handle a wider boundary at a certain age, and the same age of your other child may need a little tighter boundary and a
Mm.
little more support. So it's attunement to yourself, and then you can attune to your child. So the boundary, the connection piece, I mean, obviously now they're young adults home from college, but still you're part of the family, you're living under home, and obviously the situation is a little different. But let's go back to high school. Let's check in. What do you think? Okay, you know what? That doesn't sit well with me. So I would like a little of this. What do you think about that? Now, did it go smoothly every time? No, because teenagers are supposed to push, right? But it allowed for the critical thinking and that ownership, and then to decide, what is right for me right now.
Mhm.
And then there were times where it was very clear that they wouldn't say it necessarily, but they wanted me to hold the boundary. Like, I don't want to be out this late, Mom. Can you just stay? Oh, my mom said I can't. And you could see the relief over the face. Whether they'll admit that or not is another story. But it's still, I mean, if you were to talk to them, they would say I'm a very strict mom, which is interesting to me because I don't feel I am. But, and usually that comes out when I do have a no, a hard no. And it's like, oh, you're so this, that, and I can hold that space now. I mean, I may get a little, but I'm really not. Can you not see the 10 times before that? But
Right,
that's
right.
my work. That's my inner work, to hold that space and be like, you know what? Those are just words and feelings, and it's okay. But I still mean no. So there's that uncomfortable alignment of still saying no. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel good when I have a hard no. But if my gut is telling me it's a hard no, it's a hard no.
Mm. Yeah, so I'm appreciating that. So there are many elements in this. There's a relationship orientation for sure. There's a
Very
relational
much so.
orientation that is like, how can we be in relationship with one another, be talking about things in almost like a negotiating, but it's a little bit warmer than that. Like I always feel like
Yes,
it's like negotiating
definitely.
seems a little harsh. Like it's more just like give and take
Yep.
and trying to find something that's going to work out for both.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it also is still this hierarchy. And I think it's important to talk about that because one thing I've heard a lot of parents say to me is that they're really young, moms in particular, and they're really uncomfortable with that part where you talked about the holding of the boundary. So they're good
Yeah,
at the setting the boundary,
exactly.
but they're not good at the holding the boundary, and that
Hmm.
they're really impacted by those words that you said. The ones where they're mad, you're the meanest mom, or you're
Hmm.
you're the you're the strictest mom of anyone. Everyone else can stay out till midnight. Why don't you let me? All of those things. So it sounds to me like you have been able to handle that in a way, like you can hold that for them. Like what was it like for you in the beginning of that, like when you were doing that? Yeah.
Well, it didn't always go as easily. Um, and I still struggle sometimes with boundaries, and sometimes they have a really good argument as to why my boundary is not appropriate. And then we renegotiate, so
Mm,
I think it's important for parents to recognize that when you set a boundary, it comes back to the beginning of our conversation. Is it in alignment? Because a lot of times we set those boundaries because they're fear-based. Like,
yes.
oh my gosh, I don't want you going out because XYZ could happen, and then X would happen, then Y, then Z. Um, so we have to check in with ourselves. Is this boundary based on integrity? Is it based on alignment? Is it really realistic?
Mm,
When we create a boundary in the heat of the moment, 99% of the time, it's a boundary that should not have been set because,
right.
our brain is offline and we're just in fear. So navigating those boundaries, I think for me, it depended on what the boundary was and what the situation was. So sometimes I would be a little less strong in that boundary setting. And it really, oftentimes, even if I knew the boundary was right, it's because I was influenced by them. Everyone else's mom lets them do this, or you're the
Yep.
only one. Well, I heard that a lot around screens and phones um, when they were 8th, 9th, 10th grade.
Hmm.
And, um, but I was able to hold it because I kept remembering, I'm like, this is for your greater good. At least for me, I felt it was for your greater good and our greater good as a family. And I remember looking back, I mean, obviously I wasn't raised with a conscious parent. It was, no judgment to my mother. She did the best she could. There's no anything, but um, she was strict at certain things. And I look back and I'm like, I appreciated that she had some boundaries.
Yeah.
And so I remind myself of that when the pushback is there, and I'm clear that no, this was in alignment with me. We collaborated on this together. Just as now it doesn't fit what you want, doesn't mean we're going to change it right now, because you're not coming up with any reasons that to me feel enough to reopen this conversation.
Yeah, but I'm appreciating that's something that's really important because when we're in that, I call it the loving alpha. I actually got this
Mm-hmm.
from Gordon Neufeld, calls it the
Mm-hmm.
alpha. I mean, not that he invented the alpha. The alpha's been around forever, but that
Right.
he connected to parenting in this way. And but I think what's important is that it's that even if you have a no and it's a firm no, that there were probably points in there where you still had room for discussion, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
that I know for me that like I will start off not having a firm no, and there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
conversation, but then when I get my firm no, that's because I've already gotten to the place where I already heard your reasons why you want to do it.
Yeah.
I have come back to give you another chance to help me to
Mm-hmm.
understand what I'm missing.
Right. Right.
Finally, I'm like, wait, whoa, 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 hold on. We're done. This is an
Yes.
official no. And
Mm-hmm.
we're done. Yeah. And, but I still think, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when I do the no, even when they have the strong reaction, I often find that after that, there is a closeness that I can feel between me and my child that is
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like a weird thing that I can almost feel them stepping into the role of dependent in like a way that
Ah.
feels good for them. Like,
Mhm.
have you ever experienced that? Like where they
Mhm.
actually feel like like everything feels closer.
Yes.
How have you characterized that?
I've always thought of it now that you mention it. I mean, I've noticed it, but I haven't put it in the words quite like you have. But I feel it's that comfort. I mean, we take comfort in boundaries.
Yeah.
There's that comfort because it's like you care enough about me to work with me, and you care enough about me to hold that space for me and hold that no, hold that boundary.
Hmm.
And it allows me to breathe. And so we can breathe together, because if we're constantly shifting and changing and they don't know what's what. And so it's that comfort of, oh, I believe you. I
Yeah.
trust you.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, for me, it's relationship is the driving force in how I try to parent.
Yeah. So, and it's
And
true. They've built, it's like you've established over time that you've established you will hear them, and you're going to listen to them. So this isn't like you come in with a no, that's just some arbitrary
mm,
no. And so they know that, and that when you finally do come to a no, they do trust you. And even if they don't agree with it and they don't like it, even if they
mm-hmm,
don't. And the reason why I use the word dependent is because I think that the word dependent is like a dirty word in the world these days. And I think that when we look at our children, I think that they don't want to feel like they're navigating life alone. It's too much for them, especially I mean, maybe once your daughters are off to school, you have a different feeling of that. But I think while they're under your roof before 18,
mm-hmm,
I think they really need some of those guardrails
mm-hmm,
because they it just feels better. It's like you said, it's like there's some sense of safety almost in the sense that they can rest. They can
right,
rest in that we're there trying to give you as much freedom as we can. It's like as wide as possible, but this is it. This is how
right,
far you can go right now.
right.
And I think it's really supportive of them. And I like what you said, that is this in the best interest of our family and they're like the greater good of them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a really great question for people to ask themselves, because sometimes it's no, it's just so I don't have to feel that discomfort anymore. Like, nope, you're
Right.
not doing that because that is way outside of my comfort zone. But you're like,
Yep.
wait a second, is it outside of your comfort zone because, in an unexamined way? Or is
Right.
this outside of your comfort zone in a way where you might be able to get more comfortable if you had more information or if you were even
Exactly.
involved in the discussion?
And I
Yeah.
do think too, I mean, there is that piece, and I have pulled this card out, I will admit, at times. And if the weight of the world is really heavy on me for whatever reason, and there's an ask, and I'm just, in a little conversation, and I may go, you know what, I can't emotionally handle that worry right now, and I need you to do this for me. I know, if it were another day, we would do more, but right now I just need, I mean, for example, right now with everything going on, um, we have a dog and he's loving having them back from college and being stuck in the house. He's getting on average 3 walks a day from one of my daughters. And she used to always walk the dog at night. She loved to take him out at night with a lighted collar and whatnot. But we live in the country, one of the roads, I mean, we're on a 25-mile-per-hour road, but it's rarely people going 25 and it's curvy. And then there's a straightaway path that's 45, which most people don't, and there's no sidewalks,
Mhm.
very little shoulder. But with everything going on, and there's a little fear here. I own that fear. I mean, there was a recent murder in the country near us. They did find the person supposedly, assumed meant murder, but there was another one just a couple of days ago in the city of Madison in an arboretum. And I'm like, the world is a little shifty right now. That energetically, people are feeling different things, and I'm not comfortable with you outside walking the dog at night alone right now. And so, first there was a little pushback. I'm like, if you're gonna take him out for walks, stay on our land. I can handle that, but I don't want you on the road right now. I need you to do this for me. And she was okay with it. Whether that was an exhale for her of a safe boundary, that might have been there, but I did pull I don't want to have to worry about you out at night, a mile away from home with some car coming up right now.
But don't you think though, that's still, it's still relational. It's like you being a human being. And that's one of the things I think we often do. You're still being conscious of what you're feeling and experiencing, and you're still owning your own part in it. And and I've definitely done that too, where I've had things where I've either just said, it could be something like that, where I've actually said, sorry, it's just not feeling comfortable for me. Or sometimes I say to them, literally just don't have the bandwidth. If you want a yes on this, you really are going to have to wait till tomorrow. If you want any chance of a yes, because right now it's going to have to be a no, because I don't have the bandwidth to be able to even go into it with you. And so those are still reasonable things that it's part of what I think we're calling out here, is that it's really just looking at things. It's just really treating our children like they're human beings worthy of being heard and of being engaged in discussion with. And
and that so are we.
And so are we, right? And our feelings matter and their feelings matter. It's like, right. We don't have to be governed by our feelings.
Right.
But we can certainly listen to them, and listen to their feelings,
Yes.
That's part of the
journey. Exactly.
So you brought up the current circumstances. So so I thought, we could spend a little time talking about that, because I think that you and I are both in this, so let's just call it, where are we right now? So I already said this a little bit, but we're in the midst of the coronavirus, and that most of us are sheltered in our homes. Your daughters are home from college.
Yep.
And so, but these are some interesting times, right? Some really interesting times. And and so I just am kind of curious, where are you with all of this? How are you navigating this? How do you even look at this? Are you able to see some of the, the possibilities in it, or where do how do you navigate this right now?
Yeah. It's a journey, right? So where I am today, because I'll just focus on where I am today, is, this is our reality right now. I can fluctuate into fear. I can fluctuate back into acceptance and find that inner place. I'm doing my best really to see this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to focus on what's important. Let all the noise kind of filter away a little bit, choosing to take in what I want, choosing, how much news I want to watch or read, not really watch, but read, choosing the sources, understanding other points of view, trying to look at it from all perspectives and understanding, finding my truth within it, whatever that truth may be, can be different every day depending on my balance. Recognizing, maybe this is a time to do a reset. And how do I want it to look moving forward? Because the first couple weeks, they had their spring break, and so it was like, it's going to be 3 weeks of online school, and I think we all kind of knew it was going to be more, and so going from an empty nest to all of a sudden having noise and siblings refinding their way of living together, and they're identical twins, so you add the twin factor, and I do believe there's another element to that type of relationship. I don't know personally, I only know as a parent of twins. So our house is like, I'm trying to, hold the space for the grieving and the missing of the friends and the dorm life and going to lecture and face to face. And then we had the transition of back into online school and a lot of resistance with that. And me trying to figure out my due balance of supporting parents and supporting my circle group. How is that going to look? Is it going to be the same when we get it on a Zoom call versus holding physical space together? So that navigation, and now we're in I think it's week 3 now. It's starting to really now see, okay, there was so much noise those first 2 weeks, so much, uncertainty. I mean, there's still uncertainty, of course, but it's recognizing, okay, this is what I want to focus my energy on.
Mm-hmm.
I want to focus my energy on supporting the people I'm currently supporting. If someone new comes in, I will support them. But it's really nurturing the relationships, not just the coaching relationships and the people in my circle group, but my friendships, the people around me. Who do I have the bandwidth for to hold as well? I mean, I've had to put a couple boundaries on with a couple people, they start going into this conversation of this part of the corona piece. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to put my energy there. I'm willing to, let you say a little bit, but now can we bring it back? Because that's a slippery slope. Unless you have a purpose of an intention of why we're talking about this. And sometimes we just need to vent. And so I can kind of, I tap into my own inner knowing and my own trusting of, is this conversation leading to I just want to point my finger at the rest of the world and complain, or is it I need to complain and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to see where I am. So I kind of feel that person out, is this that, or is it the other? Because if it's the spiraling, pointing outward, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now.
Yeah.
And I say that, I'm like, if you're just going to do this and complain and then not turn it back on yourself, we need to talk about something else then. Yeah. Or I need to talk to you tomorrow when maybe you're, I can help you find a different place. And that's been difficult.
Yeah.
Because I have empathy and I want to support them, but I also have to make sure that I am supporting myself in the process, because I am supporting others and myself. I mean, I have to support myself to support others.
Yeah, it sounds like that's one of the pieces too. I think that's important, just that that's one of the things that comes out of this work of doing our inner work, is being able to know what we can and cannot handle, like what our bandwidth is, but also I think what we will and won't almost put up with in our lives too. So maybe that sounds harsh, but I think that's been a hard thing for me as well. Like I consider myself to be a person, I want to be the good listener. And I used to be the person who listened endlessly to anyone who told me anything, and it didn't make a difference. And I would just listen and listen, the drama of this and of that. And it's like mine started before the coronavirus. I wish I had the coronavirus as an excuse for it, because I was feeling that sense of like I had to have boundaries in some of my relationships, because it was hard to be with somebody when they were moving into that place of, just the venting, no responsibility, no real desire to actually use that venting, for your own reflection. So I'm with that. And, one of the things that I've come to on that too, is like, there are more people interested in listening to people vent and tell their drama stories than there are people who are interested in helping people turn inward and find their way. And so I used to feel guilty, but I'm like, they have plenty of people they can talk to about. I've actually said to some of my friends, you know what, totally, like, I'm just not the person for that. Like, go talk to, you have plenty of people to talk to about that. Like, they love listening to you. I even have clients who I say to them, do you really want to spend our time in our session with that? Like, you have friends who love the stories around this stuff. And when you come to me, don't you want to use that time to be actually moving in a direction that you're ultimately going to be able to find a lot more inner peace from,
Exactly.
So I know it's hard though.
Yeah, it's are you sharing this because you want to find those actionable steps
Yeah.
to move
Yeah.
forward towards finding that inner knowing, that inner peace? Or is it the opposite? And so, and it is hard to create those boundaries. I mean,
So
I had
hard.
started before the coronavirus, but not in the same, it hasn't been as clear. It's become much more clear. And I think that's what this time is giving me. It's allowing me more clarity than I've ever had for me personally. And I think it's allowing me to have more clarity with the people I work with as well.
Mm.
And so, it's despite it, it's that ripple effect. And you're going to draw the people who are ready for the work. And then they're going to draw the people who are ready for the work. It's not my job to draw everyone. And I wouldn't
Right.
want to, because that's not sustainable. And it's us working together collaboratively, all the people doing the work. And then they're going to help all the other people. And that's what I'm hoping to come out of this, is that there's that inner awareness and clarity and recognition that there's no one out there to save us.
No.
And the universe is making that extremely clear right now.
Extremely clear. It's like it couldn't be more clear that there is no one out there that is going to save us, and that we must turn inward, that the
Yeah,
only path is to turn inward.
right.
I know, it is almost uncanny.
It is. And we knew it was coming. We knew something was coming. I mean, a lot of people I've talked with that, the universe has been talking to us. Earth has been talking to us. I mean, talking about our own inner knowings and our own inner voice doing this, it's been happening energetically out there for a while.
Well, it's even been happening. I mean, if you look at it, it's been happening politically. It's
Right.
been happening culturally. I mean, there have
Yeah.
been many, many whispers that most of us are ignoring. I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
just illness wise, the
Yes.
increase in amount of illness, the increase in amount of mental illness, the
Mm-hmm.
amount of children who are suffering with mental illness. It's like,
Right.
you can, if you look from this lens,
Mm-hmm.
you can see that we've been tapped on the shoulder, and now we're being like hit over the head with an anvil. Like
Exactly.
dong. Like I have no
It's
choice but to do
time.
this.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how it works. I mean, that's how it works individually,
Yep.
which is why I mentioned, the more you tap into your body, the more you're going to hear the whispers, because your body is going to tell you when you've been hit over the head by
Yes.
not listening. And so
Ouch.
now, right. And now we're experiencing this on a global level.
Yeah. What are you seeing with your clients? Are you seeing that they're how do you feel like people are handling this?
Individually, it's different for people. But I want to say overall, I'm really proud of how a lot of people are really stepping in and willing to go a little deeper, and we're able to go beneath the next layer. I mean, you've heard it all the time. You're peeling the onion layers back, I feel like we're peeling another layer with
Yeah.
a lot of them, because they see it. And when your kids are home 24/7 and they're not going to work, and I mean, you can't not see it.
Well, and
Not
it's
everyone's ready,
right.
but I'd say the vast majority are willing to go deeper.
It's funny because it's like it's harder now because you can't do things, you can't point your finger
Mm-hmm.
at, oh, it's the teachers. I mean, it may be a little bit because they're still being schooled, but it's still hard. There's like a forced process of saying, wait a second, at some point, I am at the center of everything that happens in my life. At
Right,
some point, I must acknowledge
right,
that I am at the point, that's
right,
the center point,
right.
and that everything I do, I had a woman on, we were talking about the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
This week I interviewed her, and do you know the Enneagram? Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't have a deep knowledge of it, but I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what you would think of it. It's been such a fun journey for me to understand myself better with the
Yeah.
Enneagram. But one of the things she talked about was the understanding that people have an immature view on what free will is, and that
Mm,
people look at free will as like, I should be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. That's what free will is. Like free will is like, I should be able to, I mean, even you could even almost go to the place of like, I should be able to have a gun, or I should be able to have a this or
mm.
whatever. And listen, I'm not trying to take anybody's rights away or guns away. I'm just trying to say, like, there's a way that we can get to this like stubborn,
Mhm,
even possibly you could even say like even the coronavirus, like, I don't want to be sheltered in my house, and it's
mhm,
like I shouldn't have to. But what she was talking about was that free will is really just in the mind. That free
mm.
will is in the mind. It's not about the behaviors. It's about how you look at everything. And
Yes,
no one can ever take away
yes,
your ability to choose to respond, which is the Viktor Frankl,
exactly.
it's the whole Viktor
Yes,
Frankl thing, right? Is that
I
between stimulus and
love,
spot
yes,
response, there is that space. And
right.
right. That was
Love that.
right. That was such a helpful moment to me
Hmm.
to, I certainly believe all of that, but to think of that as free will,
I love that.
I know.
And it's so true. I mean, everything we're dealing with right now, dealing with, I say
Yeah.
that lightly, but,
Well, we are
but
dealing with it.
I,
We still have
yeah,
to
I
contend
mean,
with life.
we have a choice, and that choice is our free will. Do I
Yep.
choose to take this as an opportunity?
Yeah.
Do I choose when my daughter refuses, leaves the cupboard doors open again for the 19th time? Am I just going to go close it, or am I going to do the free will in my mind and look at the situation as it is and then decide? Love that.
Yeah, because it's really when I think if we can redefine free will that way, it's actually the beginning. That's the entry point. Right? It's the entry
Mm-hmm.
point for all of
Yes.
this is like, are you in choice? Are you deciding? Are you in charge of the way that you're going to think about this, or someone else imposing that on you? And over again, I talk to people, and you said it too. I think one of the things that most of the people on their path, their inner path, have done is stopped consuming as much from the outside,
Mm-hmm.
stopped watching the news. Like when I get up in the morning, I try, and I'm successful 80% of the time, to not look at my phone until after I've meditated, after I've journaled, because I don't want to take in other input. I
Right.
need to start my day with my voice and my inner knowings showing up,
Yeah.
not all the external shoulds and ways of needing to look at the world. And those inputs are
Yeah.
just too much if I haven't sort of put the stake in the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and that I'm the one that's going to be the leader of the way that I look at
Right.
the world.
Right. Right. And if we do the opposite, then we can't hear that inner voice because we're
Yeah.
hearing everyone else's voice,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we lose our empowering ability to choose.
Yeah. So the question is, right, for people is like, are we going to listen to those whispers? Are we going to listen to the things that we say to ourselves, like, I know I shouldn't do this, or I know I should do that, or I
Right.
know, or even in retrospect, I wished I had handled that in
Mm-hmm.
that way. Those are those are examples of whispers. They're not necessarily
Exactly.
the the key thing is that they're not necessarily the information, but they're the pointer that says do some inquiry on it,
Yes.
right? It's the
Be
pointer.
curious.
Be
Yeah.
curious, right?
I mean, I tell my clients that all the time. Be curious.
Yeah.
What's showing up? Now be curious. What's beneath that
Mhm.
external thing?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the
What is
thing behind the thing?
right?
The
The
thing is
man,
never
the
the
man
thing.
behind the curtain.
The man behind the curtain, totally. So I have a question for you about this.
Yeah.
About like, I know that both of us are in our practice being in deep acceptance of what is in our
Yes.
lives and in the world. But there's also the aspiration. It's like, we're not just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to accept everything and then never try to make any improvements in ourselves. Or
Right.
so when you look at the world, like we're doing this work because we believe in something else. right? We
Right.
believe in something else. We see something emerging and we want to be part of that. What
Yes.
I would love to know from your point of view, like what's the world that you hope to be creating
Hmm.
through the work that you do on
Yeah.
yourself and in the world?
Yeah. I mean, and it comes down to that intentional living. I mean, one of the things I always do in my circle groups, we start it out with your intention. What's your intention? And when I say intention, it's not a goal, it's not this aspiration. What is your intention? If you could wave a magic wand, how would you want to walk in the world?
Mm.
So to me, that's still accepting the as is, and I'm taking those steps. I'm intentionally making those choices, that free will, right? So it's creating that intention and moving forward. For me, it's about really going it to another level deeper, right? Going within, living in integrity, trusting myself, and knowing people aren't always going to like it, and that's okay. But
Mm-hmm.
if I can walk in my truth more and more, and I come out on the other side of this, and I'll look back and, in 10 years and be like, oh yeah, you thought, but it's the intent. It changes. It's that movement. There's no end point. I want to keep tapping in. I want to keep finding that alignment, and that's layers and layers of deconditioning. And I want to be a guide, a light for others to do the same as others are doing for me. It's not
Yes.
a either or, it's a both and. So I can do it and other people are doing it and we're collectively doing it together. So for me, it's that uprising of integrity and clarity and inner knowing. And then it's that reconnection with what it was like for me as a kid. I
Yeah.
used to go outside by myself. I'm an only child, raised an only child. I have half siblings that I met when I was an adult. But, in my brain, I'm an only child because that's how I was raised. And I would spend hours outside by myself. I would cross the street, go down to our local park, and I would just be with nature.
Mm.
Slow down. I mean, and my mom kept me pretty busy, but I still found space in the busyness. And that's what I remember from my childhood, is that space in between the activities. That
Mm.
space when I would go to the park, the arboretum across the street, and I would play in the water or the muck, because I didn't actually go in the water because it was mucky. Put my feet over the pier. I'd climb trees that are no longer there and sit with a book. So it's that slowing down and taking the time to appreciate the world around us. And that includes the relationships with people, the relationships with my dog who just came to say hello again, the relationships with my children, the relationships with the air, really, the
Yeah.
relationships with the sun that is peeking out again. I mean, taking those moments. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
was on a call with a woman the other day, and it was beautiful, and she was having a challenging moment. And we're working through some of the things, and her son came up and gave her, she goes, he just brought me some snowdrops from outside.
Mm.
And so she was out here and we were talking, and she was slowly coming back in her body, back in alignment. And he handed her these snowdrops, and she's like, and her video wasn't working on Zoom, so I couldn't see any of this. But she was describing it, and it was the most beautiful 2 or 3 minutes. And she's like, I never noticed that snowdrops had a little green in there. I
Mm.
never saw that before. And she's like,
Mm.
I just smelled them. I didn't know they had an odor.
Mm.
So it was like, that's what I want to move towards. That was such an empowering moment for me with her, that to experience her going from external and this, and in such a short period of time, and then here's her child handing
Yeah.
her this gift, and she didn't just say thank you, she took it and she embodied
Mm.
it.
Mm.
And that's how we ended our call. It was so
That's so
beautiful.
beautiful.
And
Yeah.
that's just slowing down. I hope we can slow down and be,
Of that.
and not
Also,
fall into the rat.
what we're really trying to do, there is a way that I think people try to envision a world. Like, what would the world look like if people were more kind to each other and if everyone was accepted for who they are? And then we try to paint this picture. But I have this hypothesis that you can't know what that world could ever look like, which is why you can't create it from the outside in. Because if you tried
Exactly.
to, you would literally not create as amazing of a world that can be created from the inside out.
Right. It would be ego based. It would be a repeat of what we're living
Right.
today in a different shape.
A different shape. Exactly, because you would have all the limitations of what's in your mind already. And so you
Yes.
have to do it from the inside out. So my feeling, the reason why I started this inside out activism concept is because the whole idea was we're trying to do activism on the outside, trying to change things with what we know right
Yes.
now, which is very limited, rather than
Very.
if, right, totally. If we come from the inside out, what we're really, both of us are longing for is for you to be more you. Like that's what we're
Mm-hmm.
asking. I'm saying, I'm inviting you and you're inviting me, be more you.
Yeah.
Settle into you, slow down, be more than do, come into the place. When you do, come from the place of being,
Mm-hmm.
this vulnerability, this authenticity, this integrity, which means that all those fragmented parts from our childhood and from conditioning, we keep integrating each of those parts to be more whole, to be more
Yeah.
true. And
Yeah.
then ultimately, if everyone did that, the world we could create would be
Mm-hmm.
inconceivable. It
Right.
would be inconceivable.
Right. Right. And I think too, oftentimes when I talk to people about, what that would look like, there's this pie in the sky. And a big part of what I do my best to embrace and model as well is that it doesn't mean everything is always great.
No.
It doesn't mean there's no negative, and I don't even call them, I always say negative feelings so people can understand. That's just a flow where you flow back. We're
Yes.
not looking, but if we all can come from that inner place, just like I've learned how to do with I still fall off the wagon just like everyone, but almost all, I can sit with that discomfort because
Yeah.
I can hold the space when it rises up within another. And
Yeah.
so when we come from within, when someone is having a challenging moment, we can meet them from our inner core and our inner light and our heart space to hold it. And then there's true healing, and that just moves through. And then we go on to the next moment. We have
Yes.
to embrace the difficulty moving forward. And that's another piece I didn't bring. But if we can't do that, we are going to have the same thing repeated in a different way.
All the time, because right, because, well, especially because, yes, we have relationships that are there for us, that are nourishing and that we're connecting and loving, but many of our relationships, we are learning through
Mm-hmm.
that discomfort, through them
Right.
activating us. That's otherwise, it's what you said before, like people, or your children showed you the mirror, you looked in and the reflection was the things you couldn't see about yourself, the unhealed parts of you. And by you being angry
Mm-hmm.
and reactive to them, that was the trailhead that showed you
Right.
the journey internally. And
Mm-hmm.
if we tried to, that's one of my arguments against why, like, I don't believe that we should ever be getting into places where we have compelled speech, or
Mm-hmm.
forcing people to be nice to each other, or like even just condemning shaming racism. Like, my feeling with that is, like, while I am anti-racist, like, shaming racism basically is saying I don't allow you to be navigating those feelings, those complex set of emotions you're feeling inside of you. There's no space for them to deconstruct. There's no space for them to decondition, because they're
Mm-hmm.
just being told it's not okay. But actually, both people have a lot to learn from that. The
Right.
person who's shaming the person who's being racist, and the racist have, I'm labeling, I'm not trying to label, but I'm simplifying. The person who's being accused of being racist and the person who is accusing, there's so much richness in that, so much opportunity for so much inner awareness and growth and learning and integration and vulnerability and love and compassion. But we shut it all down in the name of being a good person, in the name of being virtuous.
Yeah. I have done a lot of work around racism. I mean, I know we've talked about that a couple years ago or whenever, but I've had so much growth around that, and I am so grateful to have people on, as a woman of color or white woman, and have women of color on the other side, and have these enriching conversations for me to have the space to look within and be like, wow, I really had no idea that was even there. I didn't understand. And, and that was a big part of my journey the last few years. And it continues, because there's always areas to heal and understand and go, wow, look at that cultural conditioning I didn't even know existed.
Totally.
I had no idea it was there.
Right. So there's a way that we can, if we try to just gloss over things or shortcut by just telling people not to be a certain way, we miss amazing opportunities to go deeper and to learn and to grow and to pull back to keep on peeling back those layers of the onion, because as you said, and I think it's important to just say it again, is that, ultimately it is a journey. It could be a journey of one lifetime or many, many lifetimes. I happen to believe it's many lifetimes. And so the way I look at this is like, I'm on the path. And I also think it's important for people, anyone who is unsure if they're, kind of like teetering on getting on the path. I heard you say this, and I'll validate this. Like, I wouldn't want to live any other way. Some people look at it and say, when does it end? I've had people say that to me. When does it end, Deb? Like, I'm like, I don't need it to end. I love, my life is so much better than it was before. I'm not looking at my life and saying, I really wish it was easier back then when when I wasn't on the path to consciousness. Like, no way, no how. This way of living is like light years more, enjoyable, way more inner peace, way more contentment, way more ability to handle those disruptions, like you said, to have something difficult and be like, oh, like, I know I'm going to be okay.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a gift that everyone has a choice to receive.
Yes, everyone does have a choice to receive. So I have 2 questions before we wrap up today.
All right.
My first one, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to share? Like anything that's just there that feels like it wants to be spoken?
I think, the only thing would just invite the curiosity. And be open.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good way to end, and feels like, gives me like a little breath. Even just reminding me today, like, just take a breath, and before I need to do anything, pause and just be curious. And, yeah, that's great. Well, so the final question is, how can people find you if they would like to know more about what you're up to?
Sure. So website is my name, Tia Fagan, A-N. A lot of people do E-N, but T-I-A, F as in Frank, A-G-A-N.com. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Tia Fagan Coach.
Great.
And I do free 30-minute consults. So if anyone wants to just have a chat, we can just have a chat. I just love talking with people. So, and there's no strings attached. It's just, hey, if you want to reach out and just touch base, let's just have a conversation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for offering that to people. And I think I'll just say that I think there are some bonuses about you that I just want to point out. And I think one thing is the fact that you are a certified coach by Dr. Shafali. There aren't that many yet. How many are there right now? Do you know?
I think the second cohort just graduated, so maybe 150-ish. And I know the third cohort's underway right now. So yeah, we're all over the world.
I was going to say, so in the entire world to have 150, that's not that many. So to be able to have somebody, but you were also in the first cohort, right?
I was in the first cohort, and I've been a student of hers since she did her first online class.
Yeah.
So six,
Yeah.
7 years, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Me
trying to,
too.
I need to actually figure out that date. Yeah,
Yeah.
not that I need to know it, but just for curiosity's sake.
Yeah. So we both have been students of Shefali for a very
Yeah.
long time. You are a certified coach. I am not, but so that is why I highly recommend anybody who's feeling that they want to be, pursuing that path. I think you're a great person to tap into. But I think the other thing that you have is that you've been you're a parent of 19-year-olds. So you have really
Mm-hmm.
seen it all. And I do think that there's something really valuable in that people can count on, that not only do you know the content and that you're certified as a coach, but you've lived it and that you continue to live it
Mm-hmm.
every day of your
And I've
life.
lived both sides.
You've lived both sides. Yeah, exactly. So you really get it. You get what that transition is from the control to connection, but also that you still, as am I, like am constantly, you're always coming up against and meeting a new part
Yes.
of you that you didn't know before that you have to integrate.
Right.
You
And
know,
they're still teaching me every day. Even, I mean, now obviously they're back in the home, but they were teaching me when they were in college. It never,
yeah.
if you listen, there's lessons are always there.
Yeah, if you listen, the lessons are always there, not just with our children too. It's the person at the
Right.
grocery store that doesn't have the mask that you think they should. And why are you so
Right.
agitated?
Yeah.
Before we even got on we recorded, you and I said how sometimes, I'm wishing that we had leadership that was more willing to be really transparent and open and really acknowledge the nuances of some of the choices that we're making, and even acknowledge that we don't know and that
Right.
this is ever changing. And then I said to you, but I know that means I need to be looking at the leader in me. Like, where am I not being a leader of myself or a leader in my life? And I'm not talking about leader as in,
Mm-hmm.
externally, but like, where am
Yeah.
I abdicating responsibility in my life? Where am I looking to have another leader, save me?
Right.
So it's
Right.
everyone is our
Go
teacher.
within.
Go within.
Yes.
Every single one.
Yes.
Every time that we have a little bit of irritation, frustration, tension,
Mm-hmm.
contraction, go on the breath, come within, come back to
Exactly.
ourselves, come back to this
Mm-hmm.
present moment. And but not to say to avoid. It's not about
No.
bypassing, it's not avoiding. It's actually,
No.
how can we feel it even more profoundly? How can I
Right.
actually uncover what I'm feeling? So I
What is the
just
next step? Yep.
Right. And I
Exactly.
see that in you in a way that I think, I feel like you really live it and embody it. And I just think that's important for people to know, so that
Mm-hmm.
I think you're the real deal on this. And I hope people
Thank
get a
you.
chance to work with you.
I'd love to. The more ripples out we have, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been such an honor. So much fun. Love
So
talking
much
to you.
fun.
I know. So
It
good.
flew by.
I can't even believe it. It just happens that way, right?
It does.
All right.
It does.
Thank you so much.